So, having established that more or less, how do we control these spirits? Long term, just before we look at what an actual ritual would consist of, I think that it's important to emphasize what, if you're going to be working with these entities on a regular basis, what long-term practices you should be looking at. And one of those is definitely Jagoram in Libra 3, the Crowley states. It's an exercise of the awareness of action and of words and of thoughts. And it's just basically a way of keeping yourself on your toes, being able to observe yourself. Because when these things start fucking with you, you're not going to see them fucking with you right away. It's very difficult, and they're very, very good at concealing from the person that they are affecting what they're actually doing. So Jagoram helps with that kind of self-awareness, and any kind of yoga that can get you to a state of pratyahara, which is another word for awareness of thought. Crowley talks about this in his 8 lectures on yoga, which I would highly recommend people look at. And this is like the #1 thing. If you are going to work with black magic and demons and stuff like that, rigorous practice of yoga, as it's described in Magic and Theory and Practice, is absolutely essential. Because without that kind of awareness and that ability to concentrate, it's too easy to distract you and to mess with your head for these things. You absolutely have to be able to sit still, focus, and not let your mind wander. And it's very easy to let your mind wander when one of these things is present. And I say this from experience, even during times that I did have a rigorous practice of yoga, and I was doing all the rituals the way I was supposed to. There were still times that my mind wandered and I got distracted, and bad things happened because of that. Which I would add as a footnote: don't ever expect no bad things to happen. I mean, I'm not trying to. I know there's some people out there that try to, I think, really overemphasize the danger of working with demonic entities, working with the Goetia. I don't think it's necessarily as dangerous as all that, and certainly working with the other side has its dangers too, because of the entities that I previously mentioned who like to show up and pretend to be the thing that you're trying to talk to when they're actually just kind of looking for a little aggrandizement themselves. But at the same time, you know, no one gets everything right all the time. I mean, if you're not making mistakes at certain points and things aren't going wrong at certain points, then you're probably not doing very much of anything else either. The other thing that I would emphasize is that there has to be some idea of community in the person who's doing these workings. Someone that you can talk to, not necessarily a person involved with the occult per se, but someone to bounce ideas off of. So if you are starting to go off track, starting to go off the deep end a little bit, they can ground you a little and let you know when you're getting crazy. And that's important to have. And I would say that it's important too to have people outside of the magical world that you bounce these ideas off of, because people who are involved in the occult can tend to try to put a sunny face on things because they're involved in this stuff too, and they don't want it to look bad, basically. So, tools. The formula in the Goetia works for pretty much most demonic entities. I wouldn't say that you necessarily have to use the whole system or the whole thing as it's laid out, but there should definitely be a circle that one puts on the ground or uses. With that circle is a representation of the magician's individual will. So you're going to want symbols, images, names that are an accurate projection of your personal magical universe. And if you don't have that necessarily, there's some standard circles that are there. People like to write prayers on the ground and stuff like that. That works very well as well. Whatever it is, it has to be something that you can really get behind in order to, A, keep the demon out, and B, to focus the energy of your invocations into yourself. The triangle is what they use for goetic entities. I wouldn't say that it necessarily has to be a triangle, but well, I would use a triangle for the Goetia, but working with these other demons, any kind of basis of manifestation is going to work out all right. So different people like to use different things. Some people like to use mirrors or candles or water. It really, I'd say that if you're just starting out with this, to try a couple different methods and see what works the best. It is sometimes nice to have smoke in the area that you're trying to see the spirit, because these things tend to move the air a little bit, kind of like, you know, like if you ever look over the top of a barbecue or something like that, and you can see how the heat's moving the air. It makes it a little easier to see that, and that's if you're invested in really seeing something, which I don't think you necessarily have to be. I certainly don't bother with that anymore, but I don't really like sitting in smoke-filled rooms myself. I would also advise to keep a crucifix handy. Whatever system you're using and whatever your personal beliefs are, it's definitely a useful symbol to come back on. And whatever else you've done, Jesus will always be there for you if you let him in. And it's not, and I'm semi-joking, but I'm not really. Like, I mean, when we do the pentagram rituals from Liber O, we are essentially calling on the figure of Jesus. The Tetragrammaton, or Yahweh, is the four-letter name, Yod-He-Vav-He, and the name of Jesus is those same four letters with a shin, which Crowley tells us is the letter to represent spirit inserted in the middle. And that's what gives us the Pentagrammaton, or five-letter name. So when we are drawing these pentagrams, we are calling on this image just to begin with. And the pentagram was a Gnostic symbol before it was kind of demonized by the Catholic Church as well. So I know certain people, because of their upbringing or for whatever reason, may have hostility to that. That's something that they need to work out and deal with themselves or work through. I think that if someone's willing to call on different...
It's quite appropriate. Like Scooby-Doo music or something? Sorry.
I think if someone's willing to call on different gods from different pagan systems or different images from different religious systems, it shouldn't be that much of a stress to include good old Jesus in the mix. It's also important not just to have, I mean, all these systems have different kinds of prayers, and usually different demonic entities are connected to different passages in the books of Psalms. And the book of Psalms is a great place to go for that kind of things. Chapter 72 of the Quran is really good for that, for dealing with spirits as well. Well, that's literally what it's for. But what's more important necessarily than what specific prayers that you decide to use is to actually know how to pray. This kind of sounds like a weird thing to emphasize, but really we're not living in a very prayer-heavy culture, kind of. And those cultures that do still kind of implement that, it becomes very mechanized, very much a rote system that people are kind of used to having, they're forced to having go through when they're a little kid or whatever. So that kind of like takes some of the life out of it, I think, for certain people. Crowley says to inflame yourself in praying. To really, like, whatever the prayer is that you're going to use to try and do this, you have to really lose yourself in the words and really be into it. You can't be halfway thinking about the sandwich that you're going to make later. And this is where the yoga comes into it, and the ability to concentrate comes into it. But also where prep time comes into it. I mean, I would not expect someone to just, like, come home from work, flip into their robes, and suddenly, like, try to pull a demon out of their ass, because it's probably not going to work. Yeah, you're going to need to take some time and get yourself in the right headspace. Whatever it takes to do that, if it's like certain scenes in movies or music or whatever it is, and whatever it is that you choose to help get you into that headspace, you should probably repeat the same, if it works, repeat the same thing every time that you are working with that spirit that you've selected that particular thing for. It's good to have a little kind of almost a ritual before the ritual. That's why books like the Goetia talk about the bath of art, where they spend time, praying and cleansing yourself in the bath or the shower. Not necessarily, not just as a way of cleaning yourself, which is important. You don't want just physical bits of dirt and stuff like that in your circle. Yeah, vacuum too. That's important. But it seems obvious, but it's not. Like, you don't want to do this stuff in a messy room. And dust is the worst. Dust is the worst for this kind of stuff, because it is literally just the accumulated crap in the air, and it gets accumulated, and the energy builds up there, and it makes it more of a fertile ground for entities like the cacodemons that I mentioned before to pop their heads in. They have something to work with, and you don't want them. You want them to have as little to latch onto as possible. So preparing the space and preparing yourself to work in the space are important. And whatever you can do to get to that point where you can really lose yourself in the words that you're saying. And usually, I would say the praying would come after standard pentagram and hexagram rituals and stuff like that. And if the space has been banished and purified and cleansed, and at that point, almost, the Enochian angels talk about the true prayer coming from the heart of man. And that being said, sometimes it might be best actually not to write this stuff out in advance, and to let your own knowledge of the spirit and of the ritual and of the authorities that you're trying to evoke just come out at the right time. Maybe rehearse a little bit, but it should come as straight from the heart as possible. And that's a trick, and it's hard to